friends. Welcome to the Connected Mom podcast, where we really like to have real conversations, helping you to connect more deeply with God, more empathetically with your fellow moms, and more intentionally with your child. And for the record, we just don't do guilt around here because we believe that moms are carrying enough guilt, most of them for a lifetime, and Jesus doesn't want you to carry guilt. I am excited about our conversation today and about our special guest. Our guest is Trillia Newbell, and she is the author of a new book called Celebrating Around the Table. Now, that's not her only book. She's written bunches of books, and she also is the acquisitions editor at Moody. She hosts a podcast called 52 Weeks in the Word. She hosts a radio show about faithful living. She's getting ready to launch her son to college. I mean, one could argue, when does Trillia really have time to cook or to do anything related to the table? But somehow she has figured this out. And so she's written this book, Celebrating Around the Table, which is a fabulous book. It's kind of a combination between an inspirational book, a cookbook, a devotional book. It's got all the things in it, and you're going to love it. So welcome, Trillia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so fun to have you here. So, okay, let's start with your family. Tell us a little bit about your family, because we are obviously a podcast for mamas, and you get the mom life.
Oh, I do. I get the mom life. So I have been married to my best friend Thurn for about 22 years. And my kids, I have a 18-year-old who's going to be 19 this summer and a 15-year-old. So we are launching. They're both preparing for adulthood, but it's just the weirdest stage in a good way.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, isn't it? Because you want them to launch, but you can kind of feel like, oh, wait, I don't know if I'm ready for this yet, and, letting go is a whole nother conversation, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us about this book, Celebrating Around the Table. How did you come up with this idea? Oh, what made you write the book? What went on in your thinking when you decided to write this one?
Well, you had mentioned that you asked the question, when does she have time to be around the table? It is something that our family really have a conviction is to get and be around the table. So we have dinners together and we eat breakfast together. So we're together as much as humanly possible. And this was just, as you mentioned, it has biographical sketches where they're African Americans throughout history. And so this was birthed from a tradition that we do in every Black History Month, where we just walk through and learn about people. We cook and we sing and we dance. And I would share about it on Instagram, and people would always comment about how they wanted to join and do it too. And so that is how this was birthed. It was just something that we do. It's a part of our life and a part of our culture, our home culture, and now it's in book form for others to enjoy.
Well, and I love that, because the table is central in scripture, right? And family is central in scripture. And so way back in the Old Testament, God instructs the children of Israel, tell these stories to your children. And I think we have forgot some of that, and so we are to pass on our spiritual heritage for sure of telling our kids the miracles that God has worked in our lives, but also passing on cultural traditions of food and celebrations and all of that. One of the people I want to ask you about in your book is your own mama, because some of the recipes in here are from her, correct?
Yes. So my mom, we grew up eating, I'm from the South, so traditionally Southern type foods. I always just loved that time where we would gather around the table with my family. And so a lot of the recipes are really from home cooking, our traditions, like black eyed peas, greens, and cornbread. That is something that we had every New Year's Day. And so I've continued that tradition in my home. We have it every New Year's Day. And those are the kind of fun things that we get to pass on, like you said. And of course, faith as well. My mom, she would kneel by her bed and pray every night. And that memory of her is sketched in my head. I will never not think about in the image of my mom kneeling by her bed praying. And so I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to write this book and pass it along.
Yeah, I love it. So, okay, we're almost at Easter, obviously. Do you have a special tradition for Easter? Is there special food that you will be serving this Easter?
That's a great question. We don't have a special tradition for Easter. Often we end up at my mother-in-law's house and there will be just like a potluck or something like that. So that's probably, but we don't lay out a feast of home cooked meals. Typically, it's typically a potluck at church kind of
Yeah.
gathering. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in our own family, my husband and I have 14 grandchildren. We have four adult kids, and we try as much as we can with sports and everything to do Sunday dinners. And this Easter, everybody will be with us. So it will be wild and wonderful, is what I say. There will be children running all through the house. We will make a lot of food, a lot of desserts, and it will be kind of a free for all. It will be amazing. But those moments are precious and they build closeness in your family. So your book goes through 12 important people in Black history. And I would like to just ask you about one of them. What about like Elizabeth Freeman? What can you tell us about her? Because some of our listeners might not be familiar with her.
Yes, Elizabeth Freeman is one of the most fascinating stories I think that I heard. She fought for her freedom um, by, well, let me start at the beginning. She lived with a family and was a servant to the Messiah, and she heard them, um, overheard at some meeting and heard the Declaration of Independence. And so she heard, oh, wait, all men are created equal, right? Because that's the Declaration. Well, she used that to fight for her freedom in the court of Massachusetts. Yeah, it's remarkable. And so the fact that she was able to win her freedom and use that the Declaration of Independence as an argument, I think is remarkable. So I tie her story to Genesis 1, that we are all created in the image of God. And so that is the kind of that's the devotional that I use so that we can all understand we are created equally by a creator God. And so, but yeah, her story I think is really remarkable. She was so loved by her community and set a trajectory in that would last a lifetime.
Yeah, I love that. And I loved how you tied it to Genesis 1, because all of us are created in the image of God and we are all created equal in the image of God. And I think, with racism, in all different cultures, it ends up being the cause of so many wars and disunity and fractions. And it's like, guys, like we're all created equal in the image of an amazing God. And what a gift. And so, why is it important to you, Trillia, to pass on, the stories, the food, the faith of Black Americans? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much of our history that was lost. And so, like you mentioned, I profiled 12 people. And if I were to sit down with someone, they may know of one or two of them. Maybe they would probably know of three: Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth. But everyone else they would not know of. And those are the kinds of lost stories that I want to help people know about. And in many ways, it reminds me of Hebrews 11 and that Hall of Fame of faith and all of the people that we can learn from that God chose to put in the Hall of Fame of faith. And this reminds me of that. There's so many people that we can learn from and glean from and learn about their faith and their journey in following Jesus and emulate that. And so it's important to me because those stories don't hit the history books. They get lost. So many of them, even as I was doing my own research, it was hard to find. Yeah, it was hard to find sources uh, or primary sources in particular because so many our a lot of our identity and things, our culture, our um, records were erased, and so to be able to dig that up and really study and share it has been a joy.
Yeah, I would think so. So, how did you? I mean, let's make it a little bit personal here. How did you pass these stories on to your own kids?
Yeah, I so by in February, every February we would talk about different people in culture and history. So we just talk. But then we do it throughout the year as well and with other cultures. And so I think digging into history and talking and reading, and I think it's just a part of the joy of learning. So communicating, that's what we do. And a lot of communicating happens during dinner around the table. And so that to me is just something very important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really important. I just read an Instagram post by a therapist friend of mine who said that if families would go back to eating dinner together at night, she would have far less clients. And I thought that that is really true because when you're sitting around the dinner table and you're having meaningful conversations with your kids, you can get so much farther with them as far as faith, family and emotional health as well, and so it's really beautiful. So, what is your favorite recipe in the book and why?
Well, there's a few. I've already mentioned three of the greens and the black eyed peas and the cornbread because they're tradition. It's what.
Okay, so when you say greens, are you talking? I mean, I'm a white woman. Are you talking like salad, spinach,
Where are
string? What
you
are you
from?
talking?
Because white people eat these too. So where are you from?
Originally from the East Coast, and now I live in Colorado. And I'm just thinking about greens, and I'm thinking a great salad. I mean,
Southern people would know where, when, apart from culture, that I'm talking about collard greens or turnip greens or mustard greens, but that is really funny. So it's very Southern. So when I say
yes,
greens,
apparently.
yeah, that's really funny. I love that so much. But yeah, so when I say greens, I'm talking collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens. So I encourage you to, you'll see it. You'll notice it now. When you go to your store, you're going to notice the mustard. What you're really going to see probably mostly is turnip and collard greens, which are
Wow.
very,
I have never seen them before. So, I mean, but honestly, every family eats differently, right? I mean, when I think greens, I think salad. And I mean, I love salad, Trillia. So I don't think collard greens, but clearly I'm not from the South.
you're just not from the South because every Southerner, regardless of their ethnicity, will know what a collard green is. But I love this so much. So another Southern dish that's in there that I love is shrimp and grits. And so
Okay. Now that one I understand.
so shrimp and grits is something that we've had and we enjoy. So I red velvet cake, which is something my mom. So this is actually proving some of the point of the book. It really exposes people to different cultures and different, yeah, and a lot of the book, a lot of the foods are black Southern foods, but also just Southern in general. And so it's really important to uh, expose people to different cultures so that they
Okay,
know.
so
Yeah.
if I visit Tennessee and I come to your house for dinner, will you serve me collard greens and a red velvet cake? I mean, I would love that. I'm inviting myself to dinner, Trillia.
If you come, I will absolutely serve that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold you to that if I'm ever in the area. I'm going to call you. Trillia, I'm coming for dinner. Get those collard greens ready because I've never had them.
That's amazing. I will do it. But the funny thing is you will now recognize them because exposure and learning about different cultures matters, and you'll see them now. And that also often is part of the reason of even writing this book about people, is that when you learn about their stories and you learn about anything about them, you start to see things you hadn't seen before, and you grow in empathy and love for neighbor. So there's so much about it that I think is really important.
I agree with you. You know, when Steve and I were raising our kids, my husband was raised in Africa. He's a second generation missionary kid, and then we were third generation missionaries. But so when we were raising our kids, he would have culture night. And he would show them, National Geographic shows about different tribes in Africa and what they ate and how they did things. And sometimes the kids would whine and complain, oh, do we have to do culture night? And they still joke about it now that they're all adults. But I do think it's really important to reach out to other cultures and to learn what's important to them, because someday we're all going to be in heaven together, and at the marriage supper of the Lamb, maybe there's going to be collard greens. So it's good that you taught me this, because I wouldn't have known that, Trillia, and I want to be ready.
I wrote on Sojourner Truth. Her testimony is really of hope and the devastating effects of slavery. Her story is deep and hard. The Lord had prepared her. She endured terrible circumstances and trials, and we know a Savior who did as well. And so we can look to the Lord and see, okay, we can't make sense of this pain and sorrow, but we know that you are working all things together for the good of those who love you, and you have good works planned for us.
I think at times the church has been hesitant to look back on the hard things in our history here in America. And yet we can only grow as we're willing to look back and learn from those situations. And, Jesus had a lot of hard stuff in his life too. And we can't ignore that and say, well, everybody should be a happy clappy Christian, because I think by looking back at the painful history, particularly of Black people, and so many great leaders rose up out of horrible circumstances. And so it's truly remarkable, but it also gives us hope, doesn't it? Because no matter what circumstances you came from, you can rise up with hope, can't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When your hope is rooted in Jesus, mean that we are going to have an easy life. It just means that he is working things in our lives that will sanctify us so that one day we will be with him.
Yeah. And Jesus was clear on that, because he said, if you want to follow me, you got to take up your cross and follow me. It's really a call to die to self, right? But I think one of the most powerful things about your book, Trillia, is that as you pass these stories on to your kids, I think you create hope in them and resiliency for their own faith journey, right? Because your kids are going to have hard things come into their life. And when they can look back and see how God provided even in the really hard seasons of life, they have more faith for the next step.
The big point is for celebrating around the table, what I hope is people will leave with their faith built and a desire to walk with him and kids.
Yeah. And so where can people get Celebrating Around the Table?
Really, wherever books are sold. So from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so wherever you find your books.
Yeah. And friends, I really want to encourage you to get this book, because I think no matter what culture you're from, this is going to give you a glimpse into maybe a different culture, but it's also going to give you a deep dive glimpse into history and the fun of new recipes and how you can pass some of that on to your kiddos and how you can celebrate around the table. Because I think as we celebrate around the table, our kids have the opportunity to grow deeper in their faith, and they have the opportunity to grow deeper in their connection with you. And that's what we're going for. So Trillia, thanks so much for being our guest today. And, I'm going to look for collard greens. And if not, I'm going to come visit you and you're going to make them for me. So that'll be amazing. Anyway, this has been so much fun. And friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And I hope you're going to not only buy the book, but also share this episode with some of your friends and maybe buy the book for a friend as well. It would make a wonderful gift book for a friend of yours. So keep that in mind. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on another episode of the Connected Mom Podcast.